Hey, this is Louie Herron. Welcome to season 1, where it gets raw. And stay with me as we go through 4 different seasons of just sharing with you kind of the life journey. And I think it's important, and the reason why I want to share with you is not only some things you can take away from the rise, the fall, the rebound, the moving forward again. I think there's so many different elements involved. And I want to take you back really where kind of it all began. And, you know, for me, life coming up turned into an obsession. It turned into, I don't know how to put it other than things that I experienced growing up was a huge impact in my life, and it will play out in season 3. You'll see it again in season 4. So you got to watch the whole thing to kind of connect them all together, because it's super important and hopefully help you gain some nuggets as well to kind of, you know, if you're in a similar scenario yourself. But kind of growing up for me, grew up in South Florida. I don't have the story that I lived in a ghetto or we had no money, or, you know, I don't have any of those things. But in fact, we did find financially. My father was a roofer, but before I actually met him, you know, I was born and you know, literally I don't know what was going on with my mother at the time, but I do know that she was a heavy partier. She, you know, did a lot of cocaine. She drank a lot and so on and so forth. But I know for me, I felt very not wanted. I felt very not part of the equation at that time. And so consequently, she sent me to live with my uncle in Youngstown, Ohio. And I did that probably from, I guess I was 1 year old till probably roughly 5 years old. So I spent roughly 3.5, 4 years with my uncle. And my biological father, he left. You know, he was in Miami, I believe, and then I think he went to Virginia. But he was absent and didn't have any contact with him, very little. I did spend some time with my grandparents, who were very, very faith-driven people. I mean, very Christian people. And I spent some time with them. My uncle sent me to them for a little bit. I was kind of like this ping pong. They were shipping me around a little bit. And I think that played a huge role just in my own psychology of feeling love, not learning to have my own self-love, and looking for attention and looking for people to kind of, if something was missing. And you know, now looking back, I understand that. Then I didn't. So I'm living with my uncle, and then finally, you know, I'm at the time where my mom is requesting me to go back to South Florida. So I go back to Miami, and she's remarried at the time. And so I'm introduced to my stepfather, who, you know, he adopts me around 8 years old. And, you know, the whole environment was kind of different. I was, as a 5-year-old, you can imagine, I'm already trying to figure things out. And I started to develop this fear in my heart. I started to develop this insecurity because the house was volatile. He was very aggressive with her. He was very aggressive with me. I was the oldest of 5, and I was kind of the black sheep. I was 5 of the only one that wasn't part of that family. So it was kind of a interesting dynamic, especially as I got older, which I'll speak of here shortly. But you know, these things played a huge role in my life, and you know, because of that, with you know, things that were going on in the house, you know, from you know, abuse. You know, he wasn't, you know, he was a roofer, did very well. He owned the roofing company, and I learned a lot of phenomenal traits from him, but I also learned what not to do from him. And then I also learned some things that were very hard to deal with. At the time, I just kind of dealt with them and pushed them down. I just pushed them down. And again, that plays a huge role in what I've pushed down like my whole life, to think I was good when I wasn't really that good. And so if there was any physical abuse, or really the emotional abuse or the verbal, I mean, I was one of those kids where I was really looking for someone to say, hey man, you're a pretty good kid. You know, I try to do, you know, well in sports, and try to do, you know, try to be liked and all these kind of things. And I just felt like my whole life was trying to gain some kind of approval, which turns into the obsessive part of gaining that approval. But as I went through high school, again, I had a 3.2 GPA, but when it came time to sign a scholarship, I got a 680 on my SAT score, which was totally indicative of me cheating all the way through. There were some things that happened along the way that I wasn't proud of. I mean, I was intimate with one of my school teachers, which today's day and age, my gosh, you know, she would be in jail, locked up, you know. So again, why would I do something like that? I was obviously searching for some kind of connection in some way, shape, or form. So there's many things. Fortunately, I was not, I did not drink. I did not really entertain any kind of drugs. My whole focus was really and truly football and basketball. And I knew that I really wanted to play ball in college. That was pretty much it. And I really wanted to play in the NFL. That was the real goal. But as I kind of came up, I kind of really stayed somewhat straight. And seeing my mother smoke like a chimney, seeing my mother, you know, walk in on her snorting cocaine before, seeing her always drunk. I mean, the things that I didn't want to do were very clear to me. Seeing my dad being very abusive with her, I knew I wouldn't, you know, lay a hand on a woman. I knew I wasn't going to mess with drugs. I knew I wasn't going to drink alcohol. And you know, and again, he was fairly promiscuous, and everyone was aware of it, and so I know I wasn't going to cheat on somebody when I got married. So those are some things that I took away, and I did very well on almost all of them. And again, as we get down the episode, you'll see how one took me down hard. But in the end, I really was just trying to get out of that house. That was the bottom line for me. I needed to get out of the house. So I kind of endured everything. And when it came time, when I was 18 years old, it was time for me to go. And I left South Florida at 18 and really never went back home to reside ever again. I was on my own. Not necessarily proud of that, having 2 children, but for me, it worked out. For me, it made me who I am. But there was a lot of baggage that came with that move. But nonetheless, I was fortunate to be able to kind of find my way. But it wasn't all that easy. So as I leave the house, I ended up playing football at Liberty University, and I did not get a full scholarship there because of my SAT scores. I was able to play there. My high school football coach, who was like a godfather to me, Coach Cannon, rest in peace. He was like a mentor to me, and he's the one that helped me get there because he had coached some guys that went on to the NFL that played at Liberty. And so it was kind of a doorway there. So I was able to go there and try to continue this dream of making it to the next level. I get to Liberty University, and again, I'm on my own and don't really have any money to speak of, but I had meal tickets and I had tuition, I had things paid for, so I was in pretty good shape. But long story short, I wasn't playing as fast enough, so I'm transitioning to the state of Georgia, and here's how that happened. So I'm getting at a point where I wanted to play ball and I wanted to play tight end, and there was a guy in front of me that was also from Florida, and he was a redshirt sophomore 1 year ahead of me, and they thought he was better than I did. I thought he was better than I thought I was better than he was. And so I ended up transferring. I called my high school coach. I said, hey, I'm not playing fast enough. I want to go play right now. And in typical Louie fashion, I want everything like right now. And so I called him. I said, I don't care. He's like, well, who do you know in Georgia? I said, I don't know a soul in Georgia. Just tell me where to go and I'll go. And so he ended up getting me some scholarship money at West Georgia College, which was a Division II school. And I packed my bags. I'm in Virginia. Don't know a soul in Georgia. Drive to Georgia. Don't have a clue who I'm going to meet. All I know is the head football coach's name. And as you would imagine, I'm pretty social. I go meet him and figure it out when I get there. Long story short, regarding Dwayne Carswell, and Dwayne, if you ever watch this video, he does comment on my Instagram and my Facebook. Dwayne went on to play for the Denver Broncos. So Dwayne, you're the man, sir. You were definitely better than I was, and I humbly accept that. But Dwayne was great, though. He was an awesome football player and did well. So I get to West Georgia, play out a couple more years there, and I'm getting ready to transition as I realized this football dream wasn't going to happen. In the meantime, I'm working at Lowe's distribution plant on the graveyard shift, and then I get a job waiting tables at Chili's. And during that time frame, as I'm kind of making my income, I meet this guy that was from South Florida. So he comes in, and he starts, every time he would come wait on me. Well, long and the short of that is he was the finance director of a Honda dealership, and so he kind of had his eyes on me, and he wanted me to come sell cars. And I'm like, I'm not. That's not my wheelhouse, and which is really odd. He didn't realize that before I even took the job at Chili's, I was so uncomfortable to speak in front of people on a regular basis. I took the whole Chili's menu and memorized it, so I sounded like, right? I faked like I knew what I was doing, and again, has another parallel as we get deeper into this video series. You'll in these episodes, you'll see how all these things kind of tie together of loose ends that needed to get shored up. So he tells me to get in the car business, and so I still wasn't ready to do it, but kind of like the story of Gideon in the Bible, I said, you know what, God, I'm going to say a prayer. And you probably, those who are watching, you've probably been through this before. You say, God, show me a sign. Give me that sign. So I say this prayer. This was like the 4th time Carlos had asked me to come sell cars, and I said, you know what, if it's going to happen, God, give me some kind of sign. So true story. I wake up the next morning to the alarm, which is always set on buzzer, and I kid you not, it goes off to a car commercial. I'm not going to tell you it was a Honda commercial because it wasn't, but it was an automotive commercial, and I never have my alarm set on, radio, which you're going back in the early 90s. We don't even have that anymore. But so I get up and I'm like, oh my gosh, I call Carlos immediately. I'm like, hey, what do I need to do? He said, bring a shirt and tie and come on. So I go to the dealership, all right? They're selling 100 cars a month, about 10 sales guys. I actually meet with the general manager. I think I'm getting the job. Right? I'm like, okay, getting myself worked up. I'm getting ready to go in the car business, man. I'm going to try this out for the summer. So I go sit with the general manager. He talks to me for 10, 15 minutes. And ironically, we didn't really talk about like football. Ironically, he was asking me questions. Why do you think you'd be a good salesperson? Tell me about your personality. Like, he's going through all this stuff. And at the very end, he says, hey, Louie, I'll tell you what, I'll keep your application on file. Carlos said a lot of good things about you. We don't really like to put 1 and 2 guys together. We like to get like a class of 3 or 4 because it's hard to train you. And we'll call you. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, all right, that's fine. Okay. I mean, I thought it was a sign, and I'm really beside myself. So as we both stand up, this is, the true story. The guy stands up as he kind of moves. There was a Jacksonville State football helmet on his credenza. And you wouldn't know Jacksonville State because it's a 1AA school at the time unless you played them. And when I was at Liberty, we did. And so I mentioned that. And next thing you know, we're talking football for 10 minutes. And he says, hey, kid, you know what? He said, bring a shirt and tie, so I want you to start tomorrow. And it was that quick. Had I walked out of there, as God is my witness, had I walked out of there, I would have not gotten the car business. I mean, I was already like, whatever. And so that was it. That was my entry point to the car business. And as we get into the next episode, I'm going to show you and share with you the unbelievable trajectory of how fortunate and blessed I was and how fast it all happened. Before I do that, I want to make one thing that I didn't say earlier that was a huge part of this whole story. But it's when I was 13 years old, and it was a part of my faith. And as I was talking, I left that out, not intentionally. I'm just now coming to mind. I want you to know. So when I went to a Christian school, because I was getting in trouble around 12, 13, 14 years old, I was doing graffiti on walls, and I started getting into a couple of fights with some people. My parents put me in this Christian school because my grandparents recommended this. We're talking a year and a half earlier. Real ironic, and they didn't really speak to them that often. So I go to this Christian school, and they had what's called a chapel service. And I was I wasn't totally disruptive, but I didn't care for it too much. But I'm in this chapel service, and I swear to you, I feel, it's almost like when you're in church and you got praise and worship music going on. Those of you that may go to church, you'll know what I'm talking about. And you're just kind of emotional. You don't know why. Like tears aren't pouring, but that's what happened to me. And so after the chapel service was over, Miss Harris, my 6th grade teacher, I love her to death, thank her like crazy. She knew something was wrong with me, and they all knew what was going on in my home. They all knew the dysfunction and the chaos, and so they all kind of rallied around Louie. I was very fortunate that way. And we were in that hall. She showed me how to accept Christ as my personal Savior. I mean, she walked me through. She got me a Bible. She walked me through Romans, and she showed me every little thing. Made sure I understood. Made sure I wasn't making this decision because she wanted me to. Asked me, and I made that decision. And when I made that decision, the thing that was interesting that we want to talk about getting confidence. I lived in a home that was unchurched. I lived in a home in the environment that was fairly chaotic. But I swear to you, as soon as I made that decision, it was like I was living in the blind, and I was the only one that could see. I could see clearly, and I had this sense of confidence that I was comforted, and everything I was looking for, the love maybe I didn't feel, the rejection I felt, the I don't know what, it gave me a huge sense of freedom. I felt free. And that's carried me up through as we get into the next episode. My faith was a huge part. But as we get into the next one, I want to share with you, because I'm excited to share with you what happens to me in the car business, because it's not normal. Had divine intervention, a lot of hard work, but I promise you, God was He had His hand on my heart, no doubt. So, anyways, until the next episode, man, we'll check you out on the next one.